Alright guys, so we are starting off here with a 2009 Chevy school bus. I picked this thing up so that I could immediately start tearing it down to turn it into a custom ice cream truck. I will put a link in the description below if you would like to see how that ice cream truck turned out. Now I had the option to use either a box truck or a school bus, and I purposefully picked the school bus because they are better maintained than box trucks, and I wanted to use this school bus to turn into a playhouse for my kids. Luckily, I had a 58 International lying around on my property, so I was able to pull that into the shop, put the school bus down on top of it, and leave it that way until the ice cream truck was finished and all the snow melted. I then pulled it into the shop so I could start the buildup of the playhouse. Now the first thing I had to do was figure out how exactly I was going to replace this front section that was originally taken up by the cab of the school bus. So I decided I would build a rectangular subframe and then mount that to the school bus. I kind of just did this on the fly all willy-nilly. So here's the front rectangular portion. This is going to take up where the cab used to be. And then I decided to add a couple more pieces of square tubing that would then be welded to the existing bus. Now these odd-shaped aluminum tools that I'm using here, these are called Mega Squares. They're made by a local company called Fireball Tools. I'm a huge fan of them. They make it really nice to be able to just clamp down your steel and know that everything is going to end up straight and true. Having a welding table obviously helps with that as well. After I got it all welded up, I used a jack to hold it up against the bus so that I could then get it all safely welded together. Up next, I'm building the upper portion that mounts to our subframe here. I ended up using some 1-inch square tubing that I just happen to have lying around. You'll see that's an ongoing theme on this project. I use a lot of recycled or repurposed components. Nothing really fancy here. The only thing I had to do was make sure that it was strong enough to add a little bit of support to that fiberglass top because it is a little bit heavy. Now, unfortunately, the opening ended up being about 54 inches, so it was just a little bit too big to be able to get away with using a 4-foot sheet of steel. So I ended up using this small piece of scrap that I had, and then in the upper portion here, I was able to use a full 4-foot sheet. So I mounted this steel with a series of rivets, and then I waterproofed everything by adding some adhesive caulk to the edges before I sealed it up. The only thing that was really difficult, at the very top of this fiberglass section, you can see there's a very oddly shaped piece, so I had to cut out a couple pieces of steel in kind of a weird way, and then I used my Bailey to bend the edges so that I could get everything mounted nice and tight up at the top. So the next step here was figuring out exactly how to get the new school bus playhouse out of my shop and into the yard. And the plan was initially to just set it down on my trailer and then move it wherever I needed it to go, and then use the forklift to lift it off the trailer and maybe build some custom stands for it. The problem then is it would be very difficult to move in the future, and a lot of my yard has pretty soft ground, so I didn't know if my forklift could make it out there to get it off the trailer. I then realized I've got this 58 Ford chassis just sitting on the side of my house that I'm doing nothing with. So I decided to pull that into the shop and turn that into a trailer that I can then roll underneath the school bus so that the school bus can be moved anywhere I need in the future. After I removed the flatbed, the next step was to remove the engine and the transmission. This is a 272Y block along with a 4-speed manual transmission. It is in good running condition, so I will take care of it. If you end up watching this channel long enough, I'm sure you will eventually see this engine again, but for now, it'll get moved off to the side so I can finish chopping up this front end. Now the next step is to remove the front crossmember, and it would have been really nice to be able to cut the frame directly behind the crossmember and then bend it together to make our trailer. Unfortunately, the frame wasn't quite long enough to make that work, so we had to cut off all the individual rivets and then knock them out with the air hammer so that we could then pry the frame apart, knock that front crossmember out, and then cut a couple of grooves into the frame so that we could bend it together so that we could install that little trailer maker on the front. Now that little device there, I got that for I think 25 bucks at Harbor Freight. I think it's only designed for like up to 2,000-pound trailers, but it's a pretty good little product. All you have to do is get the angles right and then weld it on. So now that we've turned our frame into a trailer, we can roll it underneath the school bus and figure out how in the world we are going to mate these two together. Now, I didn't really know how well it would go together until I actually got to this part. In the front section here, I decided that I was going to just weld some 2-inch square tubing to the frame, and then I will weld those tubes directly to the subframe that I built. In the back, it's going to be just a little bit different. I did have to build some custom brackets for it. I'm calling these like H brackets. The bottom portion is going to weld directly to the frame, and then the top portion will allow the cross member of the school bus to slide right in between, and then I'll weld those. I did think about bolting everything together, but welding it just made a lot more sense for this project. Now that it's all welded together, the next step is to make it a little bit more functional and a little better looking. So I pulled it out into the yard so I could gut what was left of the interior. I did use one of the driver's side seats on the passenger side so that they can face each other. And then in the rear, I made a couple of covers for where our taillights used to be. And then for the color, my wife and I wanted it to match the natural surroundings, so we picked 3 different colors, and then we let the kids pick from those 3. Now, if you guys are a fan of this channel, you would already know that tape removal is by far my favorite part of any paint job. Next up, I wanted to build a custom table, so I used some scrap steel along with an old scrap tabletop and some L brackets, and I made this table to sit right on top of the wheel well. Alright guys, so as you can see by the snow, it has been a couple of months. We've got it situated in our backyard here. This is not its final spot. It will probably be tucked over there, but I just kind of wanted to get it in the backyard, have the kids playing in it, see what we like, see what we don't like, see what we need to do to it. I haven't finished the flooring here. We're also planning on cladding this front section with something. We just haven't figured out exactly what yet. Over here, the factory chairs are working out perfectly along with the new table. We're trying to figure out something right here, and then we've got another little spot back here. Seems like we should put something there. And then eventually, I'd like to do some bunk beds over here. I think that'd be pretty cool. We'll probably also add some electricity and some other fun stuff for the kids. Now, I don't know when I'm going to get to the rest of this build, but I wanted to show you guys what ended up happening to the school bus from the ice cream truck build. So hopefully you guys like this. Take care. See you later.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.